Captain Sarah Chun stood on a bridge of the human ship Persistence, watching the most beautiful sight she had ever seen. Through the main screen, a massive alien vessel approached them. It looked like a crystal flower made of pure light, with petals that shifted through colors Sarah had no names for. "Captain, they're trying to talk to us," said Lieutenant Park from his station. "The computer is working on translating their language." Sarah nodded. After 300 years of looking at the stars and wondering if anyone else was out there, humanity finally had an answer. And the answer was flying right toward them. The translation came through the speakers in a voice that sounded like music. "Greetings, small ship. We are the Zephyrian Empire. You appear to be new to this part of space. Do you require assistance?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the human exploration vessel Persistence. We come in peace from the planet Earth. We would very much like to meet you." There was a pause. Then the musical voice came back, sounding surprised. "Humans? We have not heard of your species. Your ship design is interesting. May we come aboard to meet face to face?" An hour later, Sarah stood in the docking bay as the alien shuttle arrived. The craft made no sound at all as it landed. It seemed to be made of the same crystal-like material as the big ship. When it opened, 3 beings stepped out. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like water. They had 4 arms and large eyes that changed color as they looked around. The leader wore what looked like living jewelry that moved on its own. "I am Ambassador Veltar," the leader said, bowing slightly. "This is an honor. We have not met a new species in over 2,000 of your years." Sarah bowed back. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. Would you like a tour of our ship?" As they walked through the corridors, Sarah noticed the aliens looking at everything with great interest. But she also noticed they seemed amused by what they saw. "Your technology is fascinating," said Veltar as they entered the engine room. "You still use controlled explosions for power. How charming." Chief Engineer Martinez showed them the fusion reactor with pride. "This baby can run for 50 years without stopping," he said. "We built it to last." The aliens exchanged looks. One of them whispered something that made the others make a sound like gentle laughter in the computer center. They showed the aliens their artificial intelligence system. "We call her Arya," explained Dr. Kim. "She can process 1 million calculations per second." The aliens seemed impressed until Veltar asked, "Does it use digital processing?" "With actual physical circuits." "Of course," said Dr. Kim. "How else would you do it?" The aliens exchanged those looks again. In the weapons bay, Colonel Hayes showed off their latest missile systems. "These can hit a target the size of a car from 1,000 kilometers away," he said proudly. "You use explosive projectiles?" asked one of the aliens. "How? Direct." Finally, they reached the manufacturing deck, where human machines were building replacement parts for the ship. The aliens watched in silence as robotic arms welded and shaped metal. "This is where we make whatever we need," explained Martinez. "If something breaks, we just build a new one. We've been improving these machines for the whole trip." "Improving?" asked Veltar. "Sure. Every few weeks we figure out how to make them work a little better. Faster, stronger, more precise. It's just what we do." For the first time, the aliens looked serious instead of amused. Back in the meeting room, Veltar explained about the Galactic Confederation. "There are over 300 species in our alliance," he said. "Each has found their perfect way of doing things. The Luminari work with pure energy. The architects reshape matter with their thoughts. The Vorthek use mathematics to bend reality." "That sounds amazing," said Sarah. "What do humans do?" Veltar smiled. "That remains to be seen. Your technology is very basic. But we sense potential in your species. We would like to invite you to join the Confederation as a developing member." Sarah felt excited, but also a little insulted. Basic? Their technology had brought them across the galaxy. What would that mean? She asked. "You would have access to proper technology," said Veltar. "Energy crystals instead of fusion reactors. Biocomputers instead of digital systems. Force shields instead of metal armor. Why struggle with crude methods when perfect solutions already exist?" "But our methods work," said Martinez. "And we keep making them better." "Better?" asked Veltar. "Why would you want to make fusion reactors better when you could simply use energy crystals?" "Well," said Martinez, scratching his head, "because we can. We made fusion reactors because we improve fission reactors. Before that, we improved steam engines. Before that, we improved water wheels. It's just what we do." The aliens looked confused. Dr. Kim pulled up a display showing human technological history. "Look at this timeline," she said. 300 years ago, we were using horses for transportation. 200 years ago, we invented cars. 100 years ago, we reached our own moon. 50 years ago, we left our solar system. We just keep making things better." The aliens stared at the timeline in silence. "You advanced from horses to interstellar travel in 300 years? Asked Veltar slowly. "Actually, it was faster than that," said Dr. Kim. "We had cars and airplanes at the same time. And computers came along in the middle. We work on lots of improvements at once." One of the other aliens said something quickly in their own language. Veltar answered back, sounding worried. "Is something wrong?" asked Sarah. No, said Veltar quickly. "We are just surprised by your rapid advancement. Most species take millions of years to perfect their technology. You seem to prefer constant change over perfection." "Well," said Martinez, grinning, "perfection is boring. There's always room for improvement." The aliens exchanged those looks again, but this time they didn't seem amused. They seemed nervous. As the meeting ended, Veltar formally invited humanity to join the Confederation. "We will send teachers to help you understand proper technology," he said. "Soon you will not need these crude methods anymore." After the aliens left, Sarah stood with her senior staff, watching their beautiful ship disappear into the stars. "Did anyone else think they seemed a little scared by the end?" asked Dr. Kim. Sarah nodded. She had noticed it too. The aliens had started the meeting looking down at human technology with amusement. By the end, they seemed worried about something. "Captain," said Martinez, "what if they don't understand that we don't want to stop improving things? What if they think we'll just accept their perfect technology and be happy with it?" Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking about the 300 species in the Confederation, each with their perfect, unchanging technology. "Then they're going to be very surprised," she said. 2 years after first contact, Dr. Marcus Webb stood in his laboratory on the human colony ship New Horizon, surrounded by the strangest collection of technology in the galaxy. Half the room was filled with sleek alien devices that hummed with mysterious energy. The other half was cluttered with human tools, spare parts, and machines that looked like they had been built in someone's garage. Marcus picked up a Zephyrian energy crystal, a beautiful blue gem that could power a city for a year. Next to it sat a crude human device with wires sticking out everywhere and warning labels in 3 languages. The human device was producing twice as much power as the crystal. "How is the integration project going?" asked Captain Torres as she entered the lab. Marcus grinned and gestured around the room. "Better than anyone expected. Worse than anyone wanted." The past 2 years had been busy for humanity. The Galactic Confederation had welcomed them as promised, giving them access to basic alien technologies and setting up trade agreements. Human colonies were established in 3 different star systems, each with alien advisors to help them develop properly. The aliens had expected humans to gratefully abandon their primitive technology in favor of superior alien methods. Instead, something else had happened. "Show me the latest results," said Captain Torres. Marcus walked over to a workbench where a young engineer named Lisa Park was connecting alien biocircuits to human processors. "Lisa, show the captain what you've been working on." Lisa held up a device that looked like a metal brick with organic tendrils growing out of it. "I took a Zephyrian biocomputer and connected it to our quantum processing unit," she said. "The biocomputer is really good at creative thinking, but our processor is much faster at calculations." Together, they solved problems neither could handle alone. She activated the device. Holographic displays filled the air, showing complex equations solving themselves in real time. "How fast is it?" asked Captain Torres. "About 40 times faster than either system alone," said Lisa casually. Captain Torres stared. "40 times? We think we can get it up to 60 by next week," said Marcus. "We're still figuring out how to optimize the connection." They moved to another workbench where engineer Rodriguez was working with luminary energy manipulation tools. The aliens used these tools like artists, carefully shaping energy fields to create beautiful, efficient effects. Rodriguez had connected 12 of them to a human industrial controller. "Watch this," said Rodriguez. He pressed a button and the energy tools began working in perfect coordination, reshaping a piece of metal at incredible speed. In 30 seconds, they had created a complex engine part that would have taken alien craftsmen 3 days to make. "The luminari make beautiful individual pieces," explained Rodriguez, "but they never thought to mass-produce them. Our industrial systems can coordinate hundreds of these tools at once." Captain Torres was beginning to look worried. What do the aliens think about these modifications? Marcus and his team exchanged glances. "That's complicated," said Marcus. The truth was that the aliens were becoming increasingly nervous about human activities. At first, they had been merely puzzled when humans began taking apart alien technology to see how it worked. They became worried when humans started improving alien designs. They became alarmed when humans began mass-producing these improvements. The Zephyrian advisors have been asking a lot of questions, said Lisa. They want to know why we're not satisfied with their perfect technology. What do you tell them? Asked Captain Torres. That perfect is boring, said Rodriguez. They don't seem to understand that. Marcus led them to the most controversial project in the lab. Engineer Chun was working with architect matter manipulation tools. These devices allowed their users to reshape any material by thinking about what they wanted. In alien hands, they created beautiful, artistic constructions that lasted forever. Chun had connected 50 of them to a human computer running design optimization software. Show her the housing project, said Marcus. Chun activated the system. The matter manipulation tools began working together, following instructions from the computer. In minutes, they had constructed a perfect building, complete with plumbing, electrical systems, and furniture. The computer then analyzed the building, found 17 ways to improve the design, and reconstructed it with the improvements. Then it found 23 more improvements and rebuilt it again. It can design and build 1,000 different buildings per day, said Chun proudly. Each one better than the last. My God, whispered Captain Torres. The architects spend centuries on a single building. I know, said Chun. Seems like a waste of time when you could be making improvements. Captain Torres sat down heavily. She was beginning to understand why the alien advisors had been sending increasingly worried reports back to their governments. What about weapons? She asked. Marcus led her to the most heavily secured part of the lab. where Colonel Hayes was working with various alien defensive technologies. The aliens had shared basic force field generators and energy shields, expecting humans to use them for protection. Hayes had combined Zephyrian energy crystals, luminary force manipulation, and architect matter controls into something that definitely was not just for protection. This started as a simple force field generator, explained Hayes, but we realized we could reverse the energy flow and make it project force instead of just blocking it. He demonstrated on a test target. The device created what looked like an invisible hammer that smashed the target to pieces. Then we thought, why stop at one force projection? Why not 100? The device reconfigured itself and unleashed a barrage of invisible impacts that reduced another target to dust in seconds. And then we wondered what would happen if we made it mobile. A small drone equipped with the weapon system demolished an entire row of targets while flying around the room. "Colonel," said Captain Torres carefully, "please tell me you haven't shown this to the alien advisors." Hayes looked uncomfortable. "Well, they asked about our defensive preparations." Before Captain Torres could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The intercom crackled to life. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have incoming alien vessels." On the bridge, they found a tense scene. The main screen showed a dozen alien ships approaching from different directions. Not just Zephyrian vessels, but luminary energy ships and massive architect constructions. "Captain Torres," came Ambassador Veltar's voice over the communication system. "We need to talk, immediately." An hour later, Torres found herself facing a delegation of very unhappy aliens in the main conference room. Veltar was there, along with a luminary being that looked like living starlight and an architect that resembled a walking crystal mountain. "Captain Torres," said Veltar, "we are concerned about human activities. Our advisors report that you are modifying Confederation technology." "We're improving it," said Torres. "Making it better. Isn't that good?" The luminary being pulsed with agitated colors. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "You are changing perfect designs. This is not improvement. This is destruction of art." The architect spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Your mass production methods cheapen the meaning of creation. You build 1,000 structures where one perfect building should stand." Torres tried to explain. "We're not trying to destroy anything. We just see ways to make things work better. And we can't help but try them." "Cannot help?" asked Veltar. "You mean you choose not to control yourselves?" "No," said Torres. "I mean we literally cannot help it. It's what we are. When we see something that could be better, we have to make it better. It's like asking us to stop breathing." The aliens exchanged those familiar worried looks. "Captain Torres," said Veltar slowly, "how many improvements have your people made to Confederation technology?" Torres thought about the hundreds of projects happening across all the human colonies. "I honestly don't know," she said. "We don't really keep count. We just keep working." The silence that followed was very long and very uncomfortable. Finally, the luminary being spoke. "Do you intend to stop these modifications?" Torres looked at the three aliens, then at her own staff. Marcus was practically vibrating with excitement about 17 new projects he wanted to start. Hayes was clearly thinking about weapon improvements. Lisa was already sketching plans for biocomputer upgrades on her tablet. "No," said Torres honestly. "I don't think we can." Admiral Maria Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human battle cruiser Defiance, watching the most terrifying sight the galaxy had ever seen. Through the viewing screen, the space around the Vorthak home system was filled with massive black ships that seemed to absorb all light. They moved like living things, constantly changing shape as they flew. "Admiral," reported Commander Singh from the tactical station, "we're getting reports from all over the galaxy. These Krillian ships just appeared everywhere at once. No warning, no demands, just attack." The Krillian hive had appeared 3 months ago from the space between galaxies, bringing with them technology that made the Confederation's greatest achievements look like children's toys. Their bioships learned and adapted to any attack within hours. Their swarm tactics overwhelmed traditional military thinking. Worst of all, they seemed completely immune to negotiation. "How bad is it out there?" asked Rodriguez. "The Luminary home fleet was destroyed in 6 hours, said Singh grimly. The architects' reality-bending defenses lasted 2 days before the Krillians adapted to them. The Vorthic mathematical shields are failing as we speak." Rodriguez nodded. 3 years ago, any one of those civilizations could have wiped out humanity without effort. Now they were all falling to an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "What about our forces?" "The human colonies are holding," said Singh. "Barely. We've lost 12 ships, but we've also destroyed 37 Krillian vessels." Rodriguez smiled grimly. The aliens had been shocked when humanity volunteered for frontline combat duty. After all, humans were still the newest, most primitive members of the Confederation. Most alien strategists expected human forces to be useful only as cannon fodder. To slow down the Krillian advance, they had not expected human ships to have the best kill ratio in the galaxy. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Park from communications. "Incoming message from Confederation Command. Admiral Lexmore wants to speak with you." The main screen shifted to show the Zephyrian Fleet commander. Admiral Lexmore looked exhausted and desperate. "Admiral Rodriguez," he said, "I need to understand how human forces are achieving such success against the Krillians. Your technology should not be effective against their adaptive capabilities." Rodriguez gestured to Colonel Hayes, who brought up tactical displays showing recent battles. "The secret is that we don't try to be effective," explained Rodriguez. "We try to be unpredictable." The display showed a human destroyer engaging a Krillian bioship. Instead of using one type of weapon consistently, the human ship fired kinetic rounds for 30 seconds, then switched to plasma cannons, then to electromagnetic pulse missiles, then to something called gravity hammers. "The Krillians adapt to whatever we use," said Hayes. "So we use everything, then throw it away, and use something else." "Throw it away?" asked Dexmore. "We design our weapons to be disposable," explained Rodriguez. "When the enemy adapts to kinetic rounds, we switch to energy weapons. When they adapt to energy weapons, we switch to biological warfare. When they adapt to biological warfare, we switch to something completely different." "But how do you develop new weapons so quickly?" "It takes our engineers months to design a single system." Rodriguez and Hayes exchanged grins. "Admiral," said Hayes, "we've got 47 different research teams working on new weapons right now. They've produced over 200 different weapon designs in the past month." Dexmore stared. 200 designs in 1 month? "We don't perfect anything," explained Rodriguez. "We just make it work well enough to kill the enemy, then move on to the next idea. By the time the Krillians adapt to Weapon System A, we're already using Weapon System F and developing Weapon System M." "Show him the workshop footage," suggested Hayes. The display changed to show the interior of a human weapons development facility. Dozens of engineers were working at different stations, building and testing weapons at incredible speed. Every few minutes, someone would finish a prototype, test it once, then either put it into production or throw it away and start something new. "This is madness," whispered Dexmore. "You cannot develop reliable weapons this way." "We don't need reliable weapons," said Rodriguez. "We need disposable weapons. If it works long enough to kill a few enemies before they adapt to it, That's good enough. The display shifted again to show human manufacturing ships. Massive factories in space were producing thousands of different weapon systems simultaneously. As soon as a design was tested, the factories began building it by the hundreds. "We change our entire arsenal every few weeks," explained Hayes proudly. "The Krillians can't adapt to weapons that no longer exist." Dexmore looked like he might be sick. "You are deliberately making inferior weapons?" "We're making weapons that don't matter," corrected Rodriguez. "When you know something is going to become obsolete, you don't waste time perfecting it. You just make it good enough and move on." "Admiral," interrupted Singh, "we're getting reports of a major Krillian fleet heading for the human colony at New Terra, 130 bioships." Rodriguez turned to her crew. "Signal the fleet. Full response. Time to show these aliens how humans fight a real war." 2 days later, the space around New Terra became the site of the largest battle of the war. The Krillian fleet arrived expecting to face the same desperate, increasingly ineffective resistance they had encountered everywhere else. Instead, they found human ships that seemed to be using completely different technology from the ones they had fought before. The lead human ship opened fire with weapons that projected solid matter at relativistic speeds, essentially throwing rocks at near light speed. The Krillians began adapting their bioarmor to deflect kinetic impacts. 30 seconds later, the human ship switched to weapons that fired concentrated gravity waves, crushing Krillian vessels like tin cans. The bioships began reinforcing their internal structure. A minute later, the human weapons changed again, this time firing clouds of self-replicating nanobots that ate through Krillian hulls like acid. The bioships developed chemical immunity. Every minute, the human weapons changed completely. Plasma cannons became virus bombs, became reality distortion fields, became quantum disruptors, became things that didn't have names because they had been invented 3 days ago. The Krillians, for the first time since arriving in the galaxy, began to retreat. But that wasn't the worst part. As the battle continued, human ships began deploying weapons that were clearly built from captured Krillian technology. Somehow, in the middle of the fight, human engineers had reverse-engineered Krillian bioships and created their own versions. Except the human versions were different. They adapted faster, changed more dramatically, and seemed designed specifically to counter the original Krillian capabilities. Admiral Dexmore, watching the battle from his flagship, realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't just fighting the Krillians. They were learning from them. In real time. During combat. "Admiral," called his tactical officer, "the humans are requesting permission to board damaged Krillian vessels." "For what purpose?" "They say they want to see if they can make improvements to the Krillian adaptive systems." Dexmore stared at the tactical display, where human ships were now using bioweapons that looked like improved versions of Krillian technology, deployed from ships that seemed to be evolving their own armor during the battle. He opened a channel to Admiral Rodriguez. "Admiral," he said carefully, "what exactly are your engineers doing?" Rodriguez's voice came back cheerfully. "Learning stuff. These Krillian bioships are really interesting. We think we can make them work about 3 times better if we modify the adaptive algorithms and upgrade the biological matrices." "You are improving Krillian technology?" "During battle?" "Well, yeah. I mean, it's good technology, but there's obvious room for improvement. Give us a few weeks and we'll have our own version that's way better than the original." Dexmore closed the channel and sat back in his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew was watching the tactical displays in stunned silence. Human ships were now deploying weapons that seemed to be based on technology from 6 different species, including modifications to Krillian adaptive systems that the Krillians themselves didn't have. "Admiral," whispered his tactical officer, If the humans can improve Krillian technology this quickly, what happens when they're done with this war? Dexmore realized he had been asking the wrong question. The question wasn't how to defeat the Krillians. The question was what to do about the humans after they won. Because looking at the battle raging around New Terra, with human ships using technology that shouldn't exist, and deploying weapons that were being invented faster than the enemy could adapt to them, Dexmore was beginning to understand that humanity hadn't just joined the war. They had changed the rules of war itself, and that was infinitely more terrifying than the Krillians had ever been. General Patricia Williams stood in the command center of the human war facility, Ironworks, watching her engineers commit what most of the galaxy would consider technological war crimes. Through the massive windows, she could see construction bays where human workers were building weapons that changed their own design while being assembled. Status. Report. She called out to the organized chaos around her. Bay 7 just finished the self-modifying missile swarms, reported Dr. Martinez from his console. They start with conventional explosives but evolve into whatever the target is weakest against. Bay 12 has completed the reality virus deployment system, added Engineer Park. It's based on Vorthic mathematics, but we made it contagious. And Bay 15 just launched the first generation of biomechanical hybrid ships, called out Colonel Hayes. They're part Krillian adaptive technology, part human manufacturing system, and part something we invented yesterday that we're calling aggressive evolution. General Williams nodded grimly. 6 months into the war with the Krillian hive, humanity had done something that terrified their allies more than the enemy. They had started treating technological development like a weapon of mass destruction. What's our production rate? She asked. Dr. Martinez checked his displays. We're currently producing approximately 400 new weapon designs per week. Of those, we deploy about 60, discard 200 as insufficiently destructive, and use the remaining 140 as components for next week's designs. And how many of those designs are based on captured Krillian technology? All of them, said Park cheerfully. But we've improved the original Krillian systems by an average of 300% efficiency. Williams walked over to the viewing window overlooking the main production floor. Below, human workers and automated systems were building devices that violated every principle of stable engineering. Ships that redesigned themselves during combat. Weapons that learned from their targets and became more effective with each shot. Defensive systems that evolved countermeasures faster than attacks could be developed. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Morrison from Communications. Incoming priority message from Admiral Dexmore of the Confederation Fleet. The main display activated, showing the Zephyrian Admiral looking more haggard than Williams had ever seen him. General Williams, he said without preamble, we need to discuss the human approach to warfare. My tactical advisors are reporting weapon signatures that should not be possible. Which ones? Asked Williams. We've deployed a lot of new systems this week. Yesterday, human forces destroyed a Krillian hive node using what appeared to be living black holes. Oh, that, said Williams dismissively. Bay 23 has been working on gravitational manipulation. Turns out, if you combine architect matter control with luminary energy projection and some modifications to Krillian adaptive biology, you can create self-sustaining gravity wells that haunt targets. Dexmore stared at her. You created hunting black holes. Well, they're not technically black holes, said Dr. Martinez helpfully. They're more like gravity bombs that can think. This morning, continued Dexmore, his voice getting higher, human ships were observed deploying weapons that apparently convinced enemy bioships to attack each other. That's the neural virus project, explained Park proudly. We reverse-engineered Krillian communication systems and created a signal that makes their ships think other Krillian ships are actually human vessels in disguise. You are using psychological warfare on biological spaceships. Technically, it's more like computer hacking, said Williams. Except the computers are alive, and the hacking involves making them paranoid. Dexmore looked like he was developing a headache. General, there are reports that human forces have begun deploying weapons that travel backward through time. Williams frowned. Those aren't weapons. Those are temporal scouts. We send them back a few hours to see what the enemy is planning. Then we build weapons specifically designed to counter those plans. You are fighting battles before they happen? Just by a few hours, said Hayes. It's really efficient. By the time the Krillians show up to fight, we already know exactly what they're going to do, and we've prepared perfect counters. Dexmore sat down heavily in his command chair. General Williams, the Confederation Council is concerned about human military development. Our scientists estimate that you are advancing technologically faster than entire civilizations have progressed in millions of years. Williams shrugged. War is a good motivator. When someone is trying to kill you, you get creative really fast. But where does it end? What happens when the war is over? Before Williams could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The tactical displays lit up with new information. Ma'am, called Morrison urgently, we're detecting massive Krillian movement. It looks like they're concentrating their entire remaining fleet for one final assault. The display showed a horrifying sight. Over 10,000 Krillian bioships, each the size of a city, converging on the human colonies. It was more firepower than had ever been assembled in galactic history. Time to intercept? Asked Williams. 36 hours, reported the tactical officer. Williams turned to her staff. Recommendations? We could deploy the planet killer missiles, suggested Hayes. Or the solar disruptor bombs, added Martinez. What about the entropy cascade weapons? Asked Park. Williams shook her head. Too slow. The Krillians will adapt to any single weapon system before we can deploy enough of them. She walked to the central planning console and brought up a display showing all of humanity's current weapon projects. No, she said slowly. We need something they can't adapt to because it's impossible to understand. Ma'am? Asked Hayes. Williams began typing commands into the console. We're going to deploy everything. Every weapon system we've built, tested, or even thought about. All at once, the room fell silent. General, said Dr. Martinez carefully, that's over 6,000 different weapon types. Many of them are experimental. Some of them are theoretical. A few of them might not actually work. And several of them will probably interact in unpredictable ways, added Park. That's the point, said Williams. The Krillians adapt by understanding what they're facing. How do you adapt to chaos? She turned to address the entire command center. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 36 hours to load every human ship with every weapon we have ever built. I want kinetic guns next to reality distortion fields, next to living metal missiles, next to time-shifted explosives. I want biomechanical drones carrying gravitational bombs and quantum viruses. I want weapons that haven't been invented, yet deployed alongside weapons that shouldn't be possible. But, General, protested Martinez, we don't know how these systems will interact. The combinations could be completely unpredictable. Williams smiled grimly. Doctor, we're humans. Unpredictable is what we do best. Over the next 30 hours, the human fleet transformed into something the galaxy had never seen. Ships carried weapon systems that contradicted each other, powered by energy sources that shouldn't work together, controlled by AI systems that have been taught to improvise and ignore safety protocols. When the Krillian fleet arrived, expecting to face familiar human adaptive tactics, they instead encountered something that violated every principle. of military strategy. The human ships opened fire with everything. Kinetic rounds mixed with energy beams, mixed with biological weapons, mixed with temporal distortions, mixed with gravity manipulation, mixed with reality viruses, mixed with things that didn't have names because they had been invented during the battle. The space around the human colonies became a zone where the laws of physics seemed to be having an argument with themselves. Krillian bioships tried to adapt to kinetic weapons and were hit by energy beams. They adapted to energy beams and were infected by biological viruses. They adapted to biological attacks and were caught in gravitational anomalies. They adapted to gravity weapons and were hit by kinetic rounds that had been fired from 3 hours in the future. The Krillian adaptive systems, faced with 6,000 different weapon types being used simultaneously in combinations that changed every second, simply overloaded. For the first time since their arrival, the Krillian hive began to retreat, not because they were losing, but because they could not understand what they were fighting against. Watching from his flagship, Admiral Lexmore realized something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The humans had not just won the battle. They had won by being incomprehensible. And if they could do this to the most adaptive enemy the galaxy had ever faced, what would they do to everyone else? Ambassador Elena Chun stood before the assembled Galactic Confederation Council, looking out at representatives of 300 species who were all staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. The Great Council Chamber, built by the architects to represent the pinnacle of galactic civilization, somehow felt small and fragile now. 6 months had passed since the final defeat of the Krillian hive. The enemy that had threatened to destroy galactic civilization was gone, scattered across the void by human weapons that most species still couldn't understand. But instead of celebration, the chamber was filled with nervous tension. "Honored delegates," began Elena, "I understand you have concerns about human military technology. I'm here to address those concerns and discuss the future of human confederation relations." Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire spoke first. His usual musical voice sounded strained. "Ambassador Chun, in the past year, humanity has developed technology that surpasses anything our species achieved in 1,000,000 years of evolution. How is this possible?" Elena smiled. "Because we never stopped trying to make things better." "But your advancement rate is impossible," protested Luminary Delegate, a being of pure energy whose light flickered with anxiety. "Our mathematical models show that technological development should follow predictable curves. Human advancement follows no curve we can calculate." "That's because you're thinking about technology wrong," explained Elena. "You see technology as something to perfect. We see it as something to replace." She activated a holographic display showing human technological history. "Look at this timeline. We used stone tools for thousands of years, then replaced them with bronze. We used bronze for centuries, then replaced it with iron. We used steam engines for decades, then replaced them with electricity. We used chemical rockets for years, then replaced them with fusion drives." The display showed the accelerating pace of human technological replacement. "We don't improve things until they're perfect," continued Elena. "We improve things until we can build something better. Then we throw away the old things and start over." The Vorthic Delegate, a massive crystalline being whose voice sounded like mathematics, spoke in equations that the translation system rendered as words. "This approach should result in inferior technology. How can constantly discarding knowledge lead to advancement?" Elena grinned. "Because throwing things away forces you to learn new things." She changed the display to show human weapons development during the war. "Every time we discarded a weapon system, Because the Krillians adapted to it, we learned something new. Every time we combined alien technology in ways you never intended, we discovered principles you missed. Every time we built something that shouldn't work, we found out why it worked anyway. The architect delegate rose to its full height, a living mountain of crystal and thought. Human Elena Chun, your species has violated fundamental principles of technological development. You have created weapons that ignore physics, ships that redesign themselves, and manufacturing systems that produce items that should not exist. Yes, said Elena simply. And they all work. The chamber fell silent. The question before us today, continued Elena, is what happens next. Humanity is offering to share our technological development methods with all Confederation species. The delegates began speaking in excited, worried voices. Elena waited for quiet, then continued. We can teach you how to build adaptive manufacturing systems, how to create self-improving designs, how to develop new technology at geometric rates instead of linear ones. And if we refuse? Asked Veltar quietly. Elena's expression became serious. Then you fall behind. She changed the display to show current human industrial capacity. This is what human space looks like now. We have 17 colony systems, each with full manufacturing capability. Our shipyards can build 1,000 vessels per week. Our research stations are developing new technologies faster than we can implement them. The numbers on the display kept climbing. In 6 months, we will have doubled our industrial output. In a year, we will have quadrupled it. In 5 years, our technological and industrial capacity will exceed the entire current Confederation. And then? Asked the luminary delegate. Then we keep improving, said Elena, because that's what humans do. The Vorthic delegate's crystalline structure flashed with mathematical calculations. You are describing exponential growth without limits. This is impossible to sustain. Maybe, admitted Elena. But we're going to try anyway. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. An ancient being that few had ever heard speak before, one of the eternal ones. Species so old that they remembered the formation of the Confederation. Young human, the ancient voice whispered. Your species threatens the stability of galactic civilization. For millions of years, we have maintained peace through technological balance. Each species has their specialization, their perfect niche. You offered to destroy that balance. Elena turned to face the ancient being. With respect, honored elder, your balance was an illusion. The Krillians proved that. Your perfect, unchanging technologies were helpless against an enemy that could adapt. And now you have become that. Enemy, said the Eternal. 1. The species that adapts faster than others can. Respond. Elena shook her head. We're not your enemy. We're offering to teach you to adapt too. At what cost? Demanded Veltar. Human technology requires constant change, endless improvement, perpetual dissatisfaction with what exists. You are asking us to abandon everything that makes our civilization stable. I'm asking you to abandon stagnation, Elena corrected. Look around this chamber. How long has it existed unchanged? How long have your civilizations remained exactly the same? Millions of years, said the architect delegate proudly. And in those millions of years, how much did you grow? How much did you learn? How much better did you become? The delegates exchanged uncomfortable looks. Elena activated a new display showing human colonies. In 3 years, humans have learned more about technology than most of your species learned in 1,000,000 years. Not because we're smarter, but because we're willing to be wrong. Wrong? Asked the luminary delegate. Every technology we discard is a mistake we learn from. Every failed experiment teaches us something new. Every time we break something, we discover how it really works. She gestured to the assembled delegates. You've all spent millions of years perfecting your technologies. But perfection means you stopped learning. When the Krillians came, you had no idea how to adapt because you had forgotten how to change. And you are offering to teach us this. Chaos? Asked Voltaire. I'm offering to teach you freedom, said Elena. Freedom from the fear of imperfection. Freedom to experiment, to fail, to try again. Freedom to become something better than what you are. The chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, the Eternal One spoke again. And if we choose not to learn your ways? Elena's expression was gentle but implacable. Then you become irrelevant. Not because we want to replace you, but because change is inevitable. You can either guide that change or be swept away by it. She gestured to the display showing human industrial growth. In 10 years, human technology will be so far advanced that your current systems will look like stone tools. In 50 years, we'll be developing technologies you can't even imagine. In 100 years, she shrugged. In 100 years, we'll probably have figured out how to improve the basic laws of physics. The delegates stared at her in horror. The choice is yours, concluded Elena. Join us in the chaos of constant improvement. Or watch from the sidelines as we accidentally leave you behind. She paused, then added with a smile that was both friendly and terrifying. Of course, if you do join us, you should know that there's no going back. Once you start improving things, you can't stop. It becomes addictive. What do you mean? Asked Voltaire nervously. I mean that right now, while we've been talking. Human engineers have probably figured out 17 ways to improve this council chamber, 34 ways to enhance your translation systems, and at least 50 ways to optimize your government structure. Elena looked around the ancient, magnificent chamber. Give us a week, and we could make this whole place work about 300% better. Give us a month, and we can redesign galactic civilization itself to be more efficient. The silence that followed was deafening. The question, Elena said quietly, is whether you want us to do that with your help or without it. As the delegates began the most important debate in galactic history, Elena reflected on how her species had changed everything without meaning to. Humans hadn't set out to conquer the galaxy. They had just done what came naturally. They had made things better, and they were just getting started. Outside the council chamber, human engineering teams were already studying Confederation architecture and making notes about improvements. Because that's what humans did. They made things better, whether anyone asked them to or not.